Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to South Wales. Welcome to Swansea City, Norwich City, in action here this afternoon, hoping to end a run of 4 championship defeats on the spin. Hello, Mr. Davitt. And here is the team news. The headline is unchanged from a starting 11 perspective, but there is a returnee on the bench. Mateusz Kliskoren back from injury. So just to run you through that Norwich City 11, it's Kovacevic in goal, Stacey, Medic, Darling and McLean as the back 4, Matson and Topic as the midfield 2, Schwartout on the right, Makama on the left, and Liam Gibbs behind Josh Sargent. That's our bench for you. Grimshaw, Schlupp, Fisher, McConville, Wright, Jurasek, Marcondes, Chris Goran and Errol Mundell-Smith. No place on the bench for Shane Duffy. Who is here this afternoon. So, Paddy, let's start with that headline news. The fact they're unchanged, given how effusive he was in his praise for that first half at Derby. Not really a surprise that that's what he's gone with today.
No, I mean we did it on our Instagram this morning. I think on Instagram that not directly because of what he saw at Derby, but it's just like, well, who comes out of that 11 to go back in? And I know it was another defeat, I understand that, but other than if Chris Garden isn't ready to go, and he clearly feels that is the case, then I'm not surprised to see the same 11. Whether that's right or wrong, time will tell, but the caveat with anything that you talk about in midweek about how better the performance was it was against a very, very poor Derby first half. John Eustace openly admitted their coach, he got it wrong, he got his selections wrong, tweaked things at half time, and obviously there was that decisive 5-10 minute spell which ultimately decided that game. But by the same token, I don't think you can dismiss that did look a bit better. Nowhere near what needs to be, but there was more of a structure to it. I like McLean in the back three. I've said it a few times now in the last few days. For me, that's probably where he's better now, just in terms of being able to affect the game. I don't think necessarily centre mid now is for him. In terms of the athleticism, that dynamism, you want time on the ball. He gets more of that playing where he's going to be playing again today. But you still have those concerns. For me, looking at that 11, it's in and around Sargent. It's where's the creativity element, and I guess that's where Chris Garden will now come into this mix. And then hopefully from next week onwards, Amanka Forson's in that as well, because I don't think Makama and Gibbs with Schwartau in and around it is necessarily the levels of creativity to unlock what they need to, which is around Sargent, some real goal threat. And that was the issue for all the good things at Derby in that first half. That was the issue, and has been for too many games. So, not surprised it's the same 11, but we need to see far more in the top end of the pitch if they can establish similar levels of control in this game today.
Yes, absolutely. Really intrigued. I guess probably the question is, Paddy, what do they need to do different from what they did to that first half against Derby to make sure they convert, hopefully, another performance, but actually into something tangible in terms of goals? Is it just ruthlessness in the final third for you? Was that the only thing lacking in that first half on Tuesday?
Well, I mean, it wasn't an abundance of chances, but there was enough chances that of a decent nature that they should have taken some of those. It's that. It's also the service, and I don't seek to dig out Jack Stacey, but too often he gets himself into that threatening part of the pitch, and his final ball, his final decision is nowhere near good enough. That needs to change. Whether a player of his, maturity can change, I don't know, but he needs to add that to his game. And obviously, with Sargent, you would like some of the opportunities that maybe Gibbs and Schwartau got early on in Derby to fall to him, and because you would think that he would have that calmness and composure to take one of them. And then I guess we go back to Liam Manning midweek about that it could be just that confidence you get individually, collectively will open or unlock something that at the moment seems that he thinks it's in there, but we're not seeing it clearly, and the results tell you that 2 wins in 11, 5 defeats in 6, 1 goal in 4. All of those numbers are pretty horrendous.
Yeah, just to raise this point from Daniel about the second half malaise, because I think that's a fair point. You look at the bulk of goals that Norwich have conceded, I think they've come between the 45th and the 60th minute this season, and that was obviously the case on Tuesday night again, wasn't it? In terms of that, when that Derby goal came, is that the big test, trying to survive that period? That kind of feels like where we are, because as I said, in terms of first half, you think Ipswich the other night, there have been examples of in the first half this Norwich team playing quite well without probably getting themselves into enough of a lead.
Well, I mean, it is a thing because it keeps recurring. You know, Wrexham was the prime example of that, where the head completely went and they shipped 3 goals in 13 minutes in that 45 to 60 window, and Derby again, and plenty of other examples. You know, where what is that? Is that the messaging that is he confusing them at the interval? Is there too much information being put in? Not enough information? Is there not that sense of urgency and expecting, like Derby? Of course they're going to come out, probably have a rocket or two from John Eustace. They're going to respond. They got booed off. If you didn't think they were going to come out with some ferocious added intent, it's very naive. Choose my words carefully. So, but the fact that it keeps recurring tells you it is a pattern, and that is something that has to be addressed. Was he not asked about that in the presser? It wasn't there midweek, or did I imagine that? No, because maybe that is clearly now one we will have to put to him. Hopefully not off the back of another example of that today, but it's happened too often for it to be some sort of anomaly, and it cuts more to him, his coaching staff, those players. What are the messages at the half-time period? Because in a lot of those games, first half, have got themselves into, if not into an advantageous position in terms of in front on the score sheet, but they're in the game and they're doing some things reasonably well. But it comes back to the mentality of it, doesn't it? This group are very brittle, they're very fragile. There is that lack of confidence and self-belief, but you'd still expect more. There's enough senior players now in and around that group. You spoke to Kenny McLean again after the game at Derby. He's not shying away from it. He's acknowledging and saying a lot of the things that those fans who were there at Derby, people consuming from afar, the ones who are at Carrow Road, they're all saying the same things. The players are saying that as well. But saying it is one thing. You need to take action, take steps. And maybe the fact it's the same 11, if that is people flagging it because it was the same players who didn't respond second half at Derby, let's hope that isn't the case for them.
Yes, indeed. Let's go obviously to the bench. Mateus Crisco, and that's a big boost for Norwich City, isn't it? In an attacking sense, I feel that he's going to have to do a lot to turn around the fortunes of Norwich City single-handedly. But look, to have a player of his quality back is huge for Liam Manning at this moment in time.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, you're leaning more into his record that he arrived here and how in demand he was, and the value that he was, attracting in the transfer window. And obviously, we know the backstory and the release clause. Brilliant, but a Danish international as well. That underlines that raw material is a serious upgrade, if we're being honest, to any players who've been in and around Sargent this season in green and yellow. Frustratingly, he got that knee injury just when, having almost managed him along because they were very keen to keep the reins on him because he had that later pre-season link-up. He was away, there was the move, he was with the 21s. So they'd almost tried to take the softly approach, and then unfortunately 2-3 games in to what felt quite promising alongside Sargent, and it was halted. And today, hopefully, at some point we will see that again. But moving forward, there's, without wanting to heap undue pressure on him, but he was their headline summer signing. There is a huge expectancy around him that he can be a difference maker, as Sargent has been at this level in the last 2 years. But he needs help. Lord knows he needs help. Certainly the way this team aren't playing for him at the minute. And Quistgarden, I think, showed enough in that game and a half that he's got the quality that he can make a difference. And unfortunately, the players who've been tried in and around Sargent in his absence haven't shown that quality to make the difference, have they? It's all been very beige, to use that term. There's no players come in, and to take Manning's lead, there's no players come in and grabbed it and said, right, you haven't fancied me here, I'm going to get in this team and I'm staying in this team because my performance levels are going to be such that you can't remove me. The fact he's had to chop and change up until this point really is symptomatic of a group of players who haven't really responded to whatever they're being asked to do day to day at Colney and then on a match day. And the fact that they kick off in the bottom three will tell you that they haven't responded nowhere near what's required. So maybe it's an indictment of where they're at in terms of their recruitment, that they're almost so reliant on Mateus Quistgarden to now be the X Factor player. But that's where we're at, and thankfully the fact that he's back involved, he's on the bench today, is a positive moving forward.
Yeah, at this point from Woz on YouTube, it feels like Norwich could benefit from 2 up front at the moment. And actually, you go back to that Blackburn game and some of the games in and around that one, that was what he was going with, wasn't it? Chris scoring in a bit of a deeper role, but it was a front two. So does that feel like a natural progression from this point to try and get it back to a stage where you can start those two together?
Certainly, if you're going with, as it seems again today, he's going to ask McCarmer and Gibbs to be quite in and around in central pockets around Sargent. For me, that's where Chris Garden was starting to be deployed, and interchange maybe with a Liam Gibbs, and you then retain that physicality and rawness of McCarmer, which might add to the mix. But that's clearly where he sees him. He's not going to come in and play two up top. I mean, obviously out of possession, they'll probably shuffle back into a 4-4-2, and that would be a Chris Garden and Sargent. But in possession, I think it's pretty clear again today with the way he set this team up. He wants those central pockets behind Sargent filled, and in Chris Garden, I know he came with a clear reputation as a goal scorer, but I don't think it's asking him to do too much that it's not in his comfort zone to play in and around, because it still affords him the opportunity to get in the box if the service from other areas is good enough. Because that's his natural instincts, to get in the area, get on the end of things. And again, small sample though it was, I think we saw enough evidence of that, capped by his goal at Coventry, that he is a penalty box operator. And again, given where Norwich aren't producing at the moment, that's one of the key areas.
No Shane Duffy in the squad. Is there any sort of element of surprise? Or again, we know that he's trained and he's fit. There was obviously the incident that people will be aware of in the week. Obviously, we'll speak to Liam after the game and kind of clear up maybe why he wasn't in the squad. But what are your feelings sat here, obviously without that understanding of maybe why he has been left out at this stage?
Just checking the bench there. So McConville's on the bench, isn't he? So I would have thought, setting aside any off the field issues this week, it would have been probably a bit too soon to have him in the 11 for definite, but even maybe in the 20, because it's a player who hasn't kicked the ball for him this season. And if McConville is in and around the group, then but to have him back in the group, and we know he's here, so that would underline that he's very much part of the fold. Now we will clarify whether today's omission is off the back of the disciplinary elements around midweek. If it is, then you go back to last season in Oxford. He was left out for disciplinary reasons there, and he didn't take it overly well. I think he'd be well advised to keep his own counsel on this one, because he's banked to rights if today's omission is on the grounds of how he didn't carry himself properly during the week. But getting past that, Manning spoke a week 10 days ago that he values what a Duffy in a playing sense will offer in terms of that experience. Whether you're having him or not as an individual, he has played at a much higher level than this for club and country, so he should still be able to contribute and add to the mix. And we'll see what happens in January with him. It wouldn't surprise me still if he's out the door as he's approaching the final 6 months of his deal. But in the here and now, he's a body who Nullian Manning needs to call on if they can keep him on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, let's bring you the Swansea team then. A few changes from them after what was a midweek defeat. No win in 5. Feels like the pressure, as it is on Norwich's shoulders, amping up on them. The headline from a Norwich City perspective is that Adam Eder on the bench for them this afternoon. They've got Figueroa in goal, Key, Cabango, Burgess and Timon as the back four. It'll be Stamenic and Galbraith, I think we can say as midfielders, with Eom and Ronald either side of Cullen and Vipotnik. Their subbench: Fisher, Fulton, Widdell, Samuel Smith, Franco, Benson, Casey, Inusa and Adam Eder. And this sort of underscores the point on Swansea, doesn't it, Pad, in terms of where they're at currently. Norwich have to see this as an opportunity to end what has been a really dire run of form and performances. We know the numbers: 4 on the spin, 5 in 6. As I think we said on Insta this morning, the last Norwich manager to lose 4 was David Wagner. Came to South Wales, won, and off they went. So yeah, they have to see this today as an opportunity, given where Swansea are currently.
Absolutely, yeah, as Derby did clearly, and it was a long come Norwich, and you hope it isn't the case again today, because obviously it's our first experience here today, but on the back of that record, on the back of clearly pushing the envelope in the window for them, I think there was reports that was as ambitious as they've been in terms of cash for many a summer at Swansea, capped maybe by 7 million or so to get Eder back from Scotland. So that raises the levels of expectancy. What's it, 1 win, did you say, in 6 here? That isn't anywhere near good enough, like it isn't for Norwich, certainly at Carrow Road. So if there is any frustration in this stadium, then use it to your advantage if you're Liam Manning and the Norwich team. But the only way you're going to do that is start in positive fashion and then get yourselves up in front. And if they do that, then let's see how deep the disaffection is. Because the parallels are obvious. This is a club who, with that level of outlay, maybe expect to be doing better than they are, as Derby, I'm sure, were with midweek. And you could sense that first half frustration capped by the fact they were booed off at the home fans. So any thread you can pull at, to touch this game more into your favour, you have to use it. What you don't want is the opposite. Given there might be a fragility here inside the stadium, you don't start well, you fall behind, and then it flips the other way, and then it becomes, along come Norwich again. So, yeah, it's not going to decide the outcome, but, as probably visiting teams now are thinking when they go to Carrow, right, well, these are on the back foot, you can sense it in the stadium. Let's pick at that scab, and then, as has happened for the previous 6 visitors to Carrow this season, come away with a victory.
Yeah, Norwich did kind of do that, didn't they, at Derby on Tuesday night? Derby were booed off. There was a real frustration in the stadium, and they still managed to lose. So, yeah, they've got to convert that into goals and pressure. How big is this game, Paddy, in the context of Mark Atanasio set to jet over in the coming days? We know he's going to be speaking to supporters. I'm sure from his perspective he'd love to come over here on the back of a win, but certainly a defeat is going to intensify the pressure on him to act in some way, shape or form, isn't it? If they're unable to I don't know, I guess maybe this is the question, would a draw be enough to kind of quieten down some of that, or do you think we are in the realms of actually only a win will kind of help, not completely take the pressure and repair everything, but at least maybe calm it down a little bit?
Well, it will definitely calm it down a little bit. Yeah, there's absolutely no doubt about it. But no, I don't think anybody would be fooled with a victory here today or an improved performance and a draw. Because they've started today in the bottom 6. We've talked liberally on this record and various other ones, but the metrics are all regressive, and that was the justification to make the change with Johannes. That all the metrics that mattered were in a regressive direction. You can't tell me that it's improved anywhere where it matters, which is on the pitch, under this manager in 11 games in. Now, that's why, it'll maybe take some of the edge off, but I still think, irrespective of today's result, Mark Atanasio has got a very difficult job ahead when he sits down with those Norwich fans to take calls on Canary Call midweek. Because, the fact that he's coming over ahead of the AGM probably does underline the gravity of the situation. And there'll be some uncomfortable questions he will have to field on Manning, the coaching staff, the players, recruitment, Ben Napper, Carrow Road, revamped delivery,
fitness,
carnage, fitness, yeah. So none of those aspects will change dramatically by what happens today. But clearly it will lift the mood if you get a positive result. I'm sure then that will bleed into a sense of, okay, well, if we can follow up against Hull at Carrow Road and get that particular monkey off the back, as it were, then the world starts to feel a brighter place. But let's not overhype what will happen today. I mean, the reality is, he's coming over because things aren't right, and irrespective of today's result, I don't think, put it the other way. I mean, if they lose today, does that mean it's the end for Liam Manning? Well, it wasn't the end against Bristol City. It wasn't the end against Derby. It wasn't the end against Ipswich. Everything that we've been saying at the back end of the weekend, the start of this week, is proven to be the case, that there was no internal sense that the trigger was about to get pulled. So if that's the case leading up to today, and Mark Atanasio is coming over, then it would feel that this isn't a pivotal afternoon for Liam Manning, rightly or wrongly. Of course, if they walk off the pitch today and they've had an absolute heads loss and been embarrassed, then are you in untenable territory? Well, we're in hypotheticals there, so I can't answer that one way or the other. But for me, it's not so much about today. It's probably Mark Atanasio, and then it'll be Carrow Road and Hull, because Carrow Road, 25,000. If it hasn't gone from today, and Lord alive, if it doesn't go from next Saturday, then then it will take more than the principal owner coming over and answering some questions from fans. I think then it'll be very hard to resist some actual tangible change in terms of personnel.
How's it going to go today?
Defeat 2-1.
Yeah, I'm going 2-0, I think. Let's hope. you fear, don't you, in terms of where Swansea are at? They'll want to see a reaction. It feels like that's often the best time to play Norwich City when you're in this run of form. So look, it's up to Norwich to try and change that narrative and hopefully produce a similar performance to what we saw in the first half at Derby, but with a result. And I really hope, for the sake of, as I turn to the left here, you can see that away and filling up with yellow shirts. They need to see something. They deserve to see something after the misery of the last few weeks. Pinken.com, the place to go throughout the afternoon. All the coverage, analysis and reaction to what happens here in South Wales. Paddy will be putting the questions to Liam Manning after the game, irrespective of how it ends. And we will see you very, very soon and on the next broadcast. Fingers crossed for 3 points. See you later.